Hello everyone, I am Tacit, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War Price is Right event, in which the Dwarf Merchant is added to the game. So of course, we have the start of the 10-year anniversary events happening for Gems of War as of today. The main feature ended up coming in with version 8.2. It's also my birthday today, so we hit the big 3-0, so we've been playing Gems of War for a third of our life, given that Gems of War has now hit 10 years old at this point. But anyways, beyond that, there are two events that are concluding that are going through midway through this week. At Friday reset time, the two that will be concluding is being able to spend all your Halloween points. If you haven't already spent them, last few days to do so. You can't earn any more, however, you can spend whatever you have. Lastly, the Mythic from last Friday, we covered a video on and everything. It's pretty underwhelming, unfortunately. Really cool troop art, but if nothing else, it is good for upgrading Silverglade if you want to get the magic milestones. 10 star, 20 star, 30 star, anything like that. It's good for picking it up for that purpose. But beyond that, it's pretty underwhelming as far as an actual troop. But yeah, with the anniversary event, we might as well go over that first, since that is the bigger thing. So if you go over to your dailies, the new dailies tab that was added in the most recent patch, of course, we have things like our tasks that you can do to go get your EXP booster for the day, the standard 3 adventure board tasks, and now we have another little thing here for basically the next month for the 10-year anniversary event. And we're currently on week 1 of the 4 weeks that it will be going on for of course, basically the entirety of the month. And essentially all we have to do for this week, potentially all the weeks, but at least this particular week, is just simply kill brown enemies for this. So this can be done basically just by doing your dailies. If you already are doing those, you're probably going to get a good majority of the brown kills you end up needing. Otherwise, you can do a quick kill team and explore if you really want to. Same things you would run for like a Vault event weekend that we just had. You could easily end up running on a weekend event. You do want to try end up completing these, which is about 400-ish or so brown kills this week. And the main reason for it is for the wands they end up getting at the end. The troop itself, or the tarot card itself, is pretty underwhelming, as is nearly every tarot card. However, once you get 4 of them, 1 per every single week that we have going on for this month, you will be able to go get the Dragon Lord Luther. So this works somewhat like the Halloween event that they did a little while back with the trick and treat weapon, where you needed like 5 of the devil card, but it ended up coming in through battle crashers rather than through, you know, the system that we have going on here. But this does basically mean that every single week you are going to need to reach that milestone in order to actually have it, because if you miss even 1 week, you're going to have to wait until you get that tarot card at a later point so that you can end up crafting this. Keep in mind, your tarot cards will not be consumed when you do end up getting this. You simply will just be able to go and craft it and you'll be good to go. It will not consume your 4 wands when you do so. As far as what it does, it is a little underwhelming, unfortunately. It deals a bunch of damage to all enemies, boosted by blue dragon gems, which, if there was a lot of blue dragon gems, you can kind of get a lot of damage, but really, how are you getting like 1 billion blue dragon gems onto the board? There are very, very few options to do that within the current state of the game. And he also gets the barrier himself, but pretty notably, no board control whatsoever, no extra turn potential, 24 mana cost, which for an average mythic tends to be really, really bad when they don't end up making it lower and have no follow-up at all. As far as traits, it has 50% score reduction, which isn't awful, and for its final trait, it has a 50% chance to convert a blue gem into a dragon gem every single turn, so it's not even guaranteed. And even if it was, it's not going to give it that much boost ratio, given that it's effectively getting 4 more damage per turn, and that's assuming nothing ends up taking it, either you, the enemy, or anything else. So it'll be very hard to really get a lot. Even if you had 100% and you had 1 of them on your team, if you're depending on this as your only way to create blue dragon gems, you're at most going to get like, what, 3, 4 at like the absolute tops. And that's not a particularly high amount of damage. That barely even brings him, or doesn't even bring him into range of the celestial dragons, let alone even the gem dragons. So for the most part, I don't really see a use case where he's going to be used. He also has like this dragon theming to him, but does not actually count as a dragon. He's a human knight. He also doesn't have particularly good synergy within his own kingdom, as there aren't a particularly high amount of humans or knights within Broken Spire. So unfortunately, in every single regard, I don't feel like he's going to get too much use case, but it does seem like he's nearly going to be free. We don't know exactly anything else that you'll need to craft him, but it basically says earn 4 tarot cards in November to craft Dragon Lord Luther, which of course would then be in Soulforge. But we don't actually know the full cost beyond the 4 tarot cards. But if we do compare it to the last time that they did something like this, we could compare it to Trick and Treat. as this is probably the closest comparison we've had to this, even though, of course, it's under currently a different system for the 10-year anniversary thing, as well as future events. But something like this, you ended up getting the tarot cards, in the other case, or in this case, 4 instead of 5, and then it costs barely any resources to go and end up crafting it. Given that this is going to be a mythic, it's probably going to cost a little bit more than, you know, a weapon like this, where you only ever craft it once, because, of course, you can end up crafting the Luther, you know, 2 times, 3 times, even 4 times, though there, of course, is pretty much no context you would ever use 4, but, you know, some rare context where you might put, like, 2 on a team, maybe, if you lack other options for Broken Spire. But, yeah, it's basically going to be like this. Likely a little bit of a higher cost than this, though. But it's the same general premise, where you earn something throughout a various event, go and collect them all. Once you have them all, you just go and end up crafting it near the final week. This does mean it's kind of time-gated, though, because you're going to have to do this every single week. So in this case, you have to do about 400 brown kills or whatever it is. I didn't bother adding them all up, but it's about 400 or so, give or take a few. But you need to kill about 400 browns over the course of the week, and then after you end up doing that, you get your first one, and then you'll have some other objective next week that we're going to have to go do, and then we end up hitting that objective, we get another one, so on and so forth for all 4 weeks, and then we craft them, essentially. But overall, as far as the other loot that's in here, not that much. I was actually expecting a little bit more. It looks like we get 1.5 purple deeds, aka writs, but, you know, they're just purple deeds. All writs are purple deeds. We have a little bit of gold marks in there, a few other knick-knack loot, but even half a shiny token, which is basically the equivalence of half a shiny token, since we're getting 50 of the dust, which I think this is the first time we really had an opportunity to really just get the dust directly. Dust is kind of weird, though, because it crafts one of one you don't already have max, though, of course, most people don't have any of the max, so we'll just craft a random one at that point, so it's basically just half of a shiny token, not even a full one. But yeah, overall, the other knick-knack loot, not that great. It's mostly just for the card all the way at the end. So you can eventually end up crafting this mythic for completionist sake. And he does have a pet that we'll be getting throughout the season that will also give him fight all stats, which, you know, not a huge amount, but we'll definitely end up helping him out a little bit. But anyways, that's everything that we have going on with that. Basically, just kill a bunch of browns, and you can easily do that in quick kill explore teams, either in a heavy brown location or simply wherever you would normally farm your quick kills, with like a Dust Devil quick kill or a Rowan quick kill team. And aside from that, I believe just doing your standard weeklies will be enough to end up covering it. Anyways, that's not where I want to go check. Let's go into the normally scheduled processings. So, went over all this. Dragon stopping on Friday. This is stopping on Friday. This is going on all week. Okay, so, new troop. Kind of useless. It is this little guy over here. As far as the glory troop this week, ends up gaining a bunch of gold, not even enough to hit the cap, and then gives 25% mana to all other allies. Like many things, the fact that he has no extra turn potential is the biggest thing holding it back. There's actually a common from this place that ended up getting buffed ages upon ages ago, like 7-8 years ago, that is actually stronger than him, because it destroys, I believe, all of a specific color, while also having a chance of hitting max gold. And if it ends up hitting that max gold, well, that just did better than this thing, and it even has board control, has mana accumulation, and overall, I just don't really see this thing ever being used, even compared to that other thing, which is already dead content. And that other thing, I believe, even has like impervious and such, which makes it a little bit better. But overall, yeah, I don't see a single use case for this. The lack of any amount of board control or follow-up is its biggest downside. Otherwise, maybe it would have a little bit of a use case as like an alternative apothecary or something. Next, event key drop table. So event keys, of course, are restricted to that of Kazel. As far as Kazel is concerned, oh yeah, I don't have it set up, do I? Let me go do that real quick. So if we just go over to the good old Kazel, click show all, throw some base rarity in there. Sure, save filter. Actually, probably should have saved filter at this point. Don't really need to save now. Anyways, as far as the event key drop table is concerned, everything that is not in drop table, there he is. This was the dwarf I was referring to earlier. Has link, has impervious, destroys all of a certain color, and then there's a 40% chance he gains max gold, which I guess is about the same gold rate as the other guy, but at least this can actually hit the cap immediately if you get lucky on it. But anyways, as far as things that are not in drop table in the event key drop table include the 5 troops from Emperinazar, there's definitely more than that. The current invasion troop for the invasion week this week. While there is another tower destroyer, this is the guy that gives you the double points, double damage, all that kind of stuff. So you're going to be having to use at least one of him, but you have to get him through the invasion shop. You cannot get him through any drop table. The Empress, which is actually one of the only good tarot cards in the entire game, gives a bunch of stats to the last enemy, but unlike things like the Emperor, which gives it to your first slot, the Emperor does it based on half its magic, whereas this does the full magic plus 1. which is really, really, really strong. There's a lot of interesting builds you can end up doing with it. A lot of them are a little bit slow compared to just running more damage on your team or more mana accumulation, but there are some niche situations, especially if you're missing other support units, where this could actually be really, really strong, especially under restrictions like Kazil this week, where you're like Underspire, for example. This could potentially end up forming some of the best teams you could end up building, as you could just feed a bunch of magic into something that gains a lot of benefit from that magic and just tear everything apart by using Empress to buff it up and then just spam casting whatever your good option is when you lack other options. So pretty good in that regard. Also has good Terra to go with how good it is. But yeah, it's one of the only few Terra cards in the entire game that's actually usable, and to a really good degree. Like, it's an actual viable troop that is among one of the better magic buffers in the entire game as far as its consistency, though it does only apply it to last slot, but does it for basically free with a 6 mana cost and a decent amount of extra turn chance if you have a lot of green on the board, and even if you don't, still an okay amount of extra turn chance. But that is only in the Volkey drop table, though of course we just had a Vault weekend, so if you want to go open those keys to try for it, it's available whenever. And the other thing that is not in drop table is the Darksmith Drenza. This is one of the things that you have to craft in Soulforge using Curse Runes. Has like a whole little process thingy to it, but overall, yeah, he's only available through that process. You cannot get him through the drop table. And that is all of them. Everything else that you see here is in drop table. For the most part, very skippable. The things that are good or that you're actually going to be needing, you get through other things. Like this you'll be getting through Invasion event. This you'll be getting through Vault Key drop table, so you don't really need to open event keys. The only reason you'll be doing event keys at all this week is because you want to go and bolster up Kazil to a certain star level. But beyond that, there is basically no point at all in opening any event keys unless you're trying to hit those milestones for Kazil stars. And that is it. So, we were just talking about it briefly. The Invasion event, of course, using this minor guy ends up giving 2 times magic and 2 times score, so you definitely want to use at least one of them on your team, though do keep in mind, he does not multiply that bonus if you use multiple. While all of them will have 2 times magic, you do not gain multiple 2 times score for having multiple. Simply just having one on your team will end up capping it out. With that being said, this does mean you don't necessarily have to buy an extra pack. I personally did, because I do plan on going double dwarf, as we'll see in the other one, using double of this guy. However, if you do want to end up saving some gems this week, you can end up using the Zayak. This guy already exists, already in drop table if you want to event key for him, if you don't already have him laying around. But he also has 5 times damage to the tower, so if your first slot dies, you'll have this guy to go use. The only thing he doesn't have is the double magic, and you do have to use at least one of the invasion troop guy, as he is going to be not only double magic, but double score, so you do have to use at least one of him onto your team. You do not gain a direct benefit necessarily from using multiple of them. Beyond that, we're just using the new Explodey Dwarf weapon, which isn't too bad. Explodes a bunch of things. I believe it gains a good benefit here as well. No, it just gains stun. I was hoping it would gain a little bit better than that. But, you know, stun's not bad. I was hoping for like a little extra barrier and stuff like that. But, I don't know, a little bit of stun still helps. But explodes a bunch of brown gems, grants random status effects to all dwarf allies, which of course is your entire team except maybe hero, depending on what hero you're running. And then summons a dwarf troop. So, really good just for tanking to make sure you never ultimately end up losing. And we use Apothecary for a little bit extra mana accumulation. Keep in mind, one other really big thing that you can end up using, this is the low rarity team here. But one thing that is pretty strong that you probably want to be incorporating into a lot of restrictive teams this week, for pretty much every game mode, most notably Underspire and Invasion, is King Highforge. If you have it, or if you don't have it, go throw some event keys for it. He gives 50% mana start to all dwarves, and if you're going to event key for anything this week, this is probably the thing you'd want to end up doing it for, as 50% mana start to all dwarves, while very situational, is very helpful in a week like this, where pretty much all your restrictions are to either use pure dwarf or basically a pseudo dwarf team. Like when it says to go use a pure Kazil team, that basically means use pure dwarf, unless you're running a Empress build. Anyways, as far as other things that we have going on this week, of course, as I mentioned, the next 3 days and several hours is the last chance you have to spend your currency from the Halloween event, as well as to get the new mythic that came out last Friday if you want to go for either of them. Beyond that, this Tuesday we have the faction event for Emperor Venusaur, which is a brown-yellow restriction. Or sorry, did I say Wednesday? I meant Tuesday. Election day. Anyways, Wednesday we got ourselves one of the pets. Actually, I could go check. We have the whole calendar. We are getting the dwarf pet, the dwarf Ponus pet. Hey, next week, 10-year anniversary pet. But yeah, we're getting the dwarf pet for this Wednesday. Thursday, we have ourselves the class event for Rune Priest. Rune Priest, very situational. You really only use it on a week like this. You're pretty much never using it on a team unless you're using the 50% mana start to all dwarves. And beyond that, you're generally just using mech class if you're looking for something similar. because Mech has a natural 50% mana start while still having Dispel, while still having a decent amount of Barrier. While it doesn't have Barrier on Brown like the Rune Priest does, generally if you want a Barrier on Brown hero class, you know, you're just running Elementals or something else that's decently strong. Rune Priest is just in one of those weird in-betweens where if you're not running a 4x Dwarf team, you're basically not bothering with it. So it'll definitely see some use case this week, but beyond that, you pretty much never bring it out other than for Keyzale weeks like this. And as we can see right here, this Friday, we have ourselves a Bounty Hunter event. Bounty Hunter, of course, pretty standard as usual. You just use the Bounty Hunter troop, get your 30 times score, 24 times score for using the Bounty Captain with 2 Bounty Troops, or a Bounty Captain with 3 Bounty Troops. The 2 Bounty Troop option being if you end up going down and using a damage source like Solarix, Tesla, or anything else that you want to use to speed it along. Will cost generally 1 extra tier compared to doing it all the battles. However, it saves a lot of time. You can get the event done easily in under an hour doing it that way, and get a bunch of orbs and other various loot throughout the way, or just simply do your free battles. As far as troops are concerned this week, let's see, what special dragon did we end up getting? I didn't actually check earlier. We end up getting Saphirax, which unfortunately is a gem dragon, but if you've been needing it for your Diamantina completion, it is available this week. Beyond that, Piskia is pretty good as far as mythics are concerned. It's a very luck-based mythic, but it does have a double devour chance, and they are independent of each other, so if you get really lucky, you will get a double devour into a double devour. He also has really good extra turn chance while feeding mana into himself, which is nice to see a mythic that actually, you know, works properly. Unlike a lot of mythics that just auto-end their turn and do almost nothing, this thing has not only really good extra turn potential while having a bunch of devour, but also ends up feeding all of his mana back into himself since he creates a bunch of blue. Unfortunately, he's not like super spammable since you would need to get more greens onto the board, and if you cast him once, there's likely very little green left on the board unless you have like a green-blue storm or, you know, something similar going. Actually, is there even a green-blue storm now that I'm thinking about it? I don't think there is, but, you know, he's still pretty good. Really luck-based, and I personally don't like using him because of that, but he's still very strong, especially in restrictions where you might end up using him like Merlantis or Merfolk. Beyond that, I think that is the only thing worth crafting. Kind of funny that Highforge is here, though. Definitely better to get him through event keys this week if you want him. Not really worth crafting him in diamonds. As far as weapons are concerned, nothing really too noteworthy. War and Peace, I believe you still get for free from the quest line, but if not, crafting that could be pretty good for the Underspire event this week. So if you're lacking any option for that, like if you don't have Doom Sledge or anything, or even if you do, War and Peace is still going to be better if you run an Empress build. Beyond that, I don't believe this is any component for either the 2 weapons, though I will always be paranoid to double ultra mega check every single time, just in case I forgot. But no, there is no good craftable weapon piece that you need for any of the weapons from Keyzale. So overall, pretty skippable, unless you're just looking to pick up a weapon to go do Underspire with this week. With that being said, let's go over all of the teams. So, let's start from the top. All of these will be in the description and pinned comment if you want to go and copy paste any of them. Let's start all the way from the Invasion event, which of course is specifically Dwarves. So you're allowed to use Dwarves from any other location as well. However, I believe for both these teams I do use pure Keyzale Dwarves. However, you can use any of the Dwarves from like Drakzoom if you want some skull spam, which is definitely an option. So here I ended up buying an extra tier. Keep in mind you will need to buy an extra tier in order to go and end up getting him, or, you know, use an extra blue orb in order to go and actually have enough copies, because if you only have 1 copy of him, you cannot put more than 1 on your team. And while there is another one that you can end up using, just doubling up on him because of his double magic and everything, ends up working out pretty well. He has 8 destroy, so he can gain some of his mana back, though the other guy does 2 with his 3 red explodes, I believe it is. And of course, just the standard amount of extra tower damage. So basically, spamming this guy, using 1 for a little bit of mana accumulation, 50% mana start to get it all going, using the Rune Priest hero class. For the other team, we drop Rune Priest hero class for a natural 50% mana start, since we're not using the higher rarity High King Highforge, since that is technically a legend, though it is a pretty free legend to get this week, since it is in both Soulforge and event keys, though you should probably event key for it if you're going to do one or the other. But as far as your cheaper team, you still need to go get at least 1 copy of this guy so you can get your double points, very important. He also gets double magic. This guy doesn't get double magic, however, you likely already have him laying around, or if you don't, you can already event key for him and get him pretty cheaply. He has 3 explodes, so he still gains some of his mana back, and, you know, still has all the same damage as far as skulls are concerned. So your skull damage isn't any lower, only when he casts is he not getting that double magic bonus. So in any situation where he's taking a skull after your first slot has died, he is doing the same amount of damage. It's only his casting that is weaker. As far as the weapon, we're just using this as a backup plan. You also get this for free from, you know, just buying up to tier 3. Not free, literally, but, you know, if you're already getting this guy, you're pretty much getting the weapon as well. This is on tier 2 to get a copy. This is on tier 3, so it's definitely worth going a little bit deeper to end up getting this weapon. You also get more sigils and everything. As far as the weapon is concerned, basically it's a standard explodey weapon. Gets a little bit of stun on first slot, and you get to keep resummoning dwarves. So if you do end up dying on one of them, you'll have a backup plan to keep it revived. And we have Apothecary here, just mostly for cleanse, which you won't need too much, but could come into play. But you're mostly using it to feed a bunch of brown into your main killers, as both the two troops that end up are being the invasion troops that you have to use are both brown, so you can just feed brown mana into them and be good to go. You can also, of course, incorporate a brown weapon if you so choose, though I just did it with this one as it is very accessible since it's available through the current invasion event. Next, we have ourselves the faction event. This is a yellow-brown restriction for Emperor Inazar, though in this game mode you are allowed to run any colored hero weapon. For this, of course, you could do the Guards Avatar Sir Quen Headley build, though I went a little bit of a cheaper route for once with the double Zachi, where you do the Harpy Mage turn to Empower in order to go and mana accumulate. You then have Brown Storm activated because of that, and then you just spam her, which does a bunch of damage to all enemies and does 5 explodes. It's a little bit worse than doing the Guards Avatar Sir Quen Headley. However, it is substantially cheaper. All you have to do is just throw a bunch of Chaos Shards at the Stonesong Aerie faction, you'll be good to go. And if you don't happen to have this particular weapon, you can use any explodey weapon that doesn't block them. I just happen to be using Abral Crystal here, though you can use any that you have laying around. Could even use the new weapon. Oh, I guess it does block it a little bit, the red-yellow one, but, you know, try to use whatever explodey weapon you have or mana accumulation weapon that doesn't end up blocking there, and you'll be good to go. Next, we have ourselves the Quick Kill team. This is a High King Aragorn Catharic's Quick Kill, using Wand for that little bit of extra offset in order to curse and or cleanse. Also using Mech to get rid of all those submerges, so we don't have to end up applying an extra curse. And if we do, we have even more curse off of Catharic's. And of course, just using a turn to Empower off of Harpy Mage, since it has 75% mana start, and you end up getting Enchant. By the second turn, you will be able to go and cast her and get all your mana that you need. As far as the Pure Faction team is concerned, you just double up on the Legend into double of the best damage source, which is the Kobold Knight. Even though this place has gotten a 5th damage option, it is still better to spam out Kobold Knight. The main reason for this is he scales better off of magic, and the basic premise of this place is you try to keep your you try to keep your whole team alive, and just keep buffing with a bunch of extra turns to get a bunch of life and magic. You can also cast your ability here and there, and essentially you're just trying to scale your magic high enough that you can end up killing out the entire enemy team. And while the other troop does initially have better damage than the Kobold Knight, this thing scales better off of magic, so the main goal that you're trying to do of scaling so you can just go kill out the enemy team, this just works better for, so you still just double up on the Kobold Knight. And if they happen to die, you get resummoned off of your Emperor Inazar, so you might end up getting the other guy anyways, but it just resummons all the kobolds from the kingdom. So even if you take deaths, you generally want to try not to on the final fight, but if you do up to that point, it shouldn't be that big a deal. The main reason you don't want to on the final fight is you need to scale up that magic so you can have your damage to win, because they will eventually hit 1,000 all HP due to the Legend giving so much HP gain every single time, which is the whole reason why you have to scale up your magic. Next, we have the Rune Priest event. As far as this, you have to use specifically dwarves from Khaziel. And this mech thing does count as a dwarf. You use it to create a bunch of brown. We're using this purely for its Stone Link. And then we're just feeding into any brown weapon of our choice. In this case, just Black Manacle, just nice, cheap, accessible. And we're just doing that with Archmages so we can get all of our mana very quickly. Next, we have ourselves the Underspire team. Underspire specifically anything from Khaziel. With that being said, it does mean we're allowed to use non-dwarves, which does mean we're allowed to use the Empress build we were talking about earlier. So how this ends up working is Empress gives a bunch of skills, all skills, to the last ally. So you just put something that scales really well off of magic, for example, War and Peace, which is all enemies simultaneously. So we're getting, 4 hits for every single magic that we gain. So essentially 4 extra damage for every magic. And we're just casting her. This ends up giving a bunch of stats to our last slot. We then cast War and Peace for a ton of damage. Gorgotha's here mostly to tank, though you could put anything there. And Apothecary there, of course, is just for mana accumulation and cleanse. And that's pretty much the whole premise. We just keep getting Empress back up, feeding a bunch of magic into our War and Peace, casting War and Peace until we win. And that's all we have to do. The only big issue with this team is a little bit mana blocky, but once we get the first Gorgotha down, we should be good to go, because then we have our Apothecary, we have our Empress. We'll probably extra turn on its own anyways, and then we can kind of just keep going with off of Apothecary into Gorgotha for the most part. And then as far as Underspire is concerned, we're skipping out on Gorgotha for Mountain Crusher, which is a weapon you get for free just from leveling up your Brown Hero Mastery. Pretty good, just tank weapon in general when you're using a barrier on Brown Hero class. In this case, we're using it with Elementals, so you can use Titan or anything else that you wish. Elementals is a little bit safer, though it is a little bit slower as well. Apothecary for the same thing as before for its cleanse, as well as just to mass feed brown, as almost everything in Khaziel is pretty brown heavy as far as damage sources are concerned, as well as just troops in general. And then we're just using Lasher. It's not the greatest damage source, but it'll get the job done. Not only does he have Brown Link and a bunch of resistance, but he ends up hitting 6 times. We don't have a way to scale him here since we're not using Empress. However, 6 hits, still really nice. and we're just going to poke a billion times with that, and yeah, just end up chipping down the enemy very slowly. Unfortunately, this does mean you're distributing the damage on the enemy team pretty randomly, so it is going to kill most of them at the same time rather than concentrating down enemies, but sometimes you'll get lucky and it will multi-focus on one. One thing that you might have to do occasionally with this team is take some skulls here and there in order to chip down the first slot, and just to make sure the enemy team, of course, isn't taking it themselves. And then, of course, we just have the standard bounty stuff as we always do on Friday, where those teams pretty much never change. It's just the bounty captain with 3 bounty troops using Ogre's Tagraki build, or you end up doing it based on whatever you want to end up building around for your main damage source, aka just go all in on Stellaryx or Tesla or any other big damage source that you have laying around. Even your hero, if you want to go and give some hero XP and try leveling that up a little bit while doing everything. But anyways, guys, that's the full rundown on everything. But yeah, as far as the 10-year anniversary events, it seems okay. As far as, you know, what we normally get, it does seem like a little bit more than normal. However, I don't know. I still feel like it's a little bit lackluster here and there. We're still going to be getting some other stuff along the way, so we'll just have to kind of wait and see. But as far as the actual main event, the main trip that we end up getting from it does seem like a little bit on the weaker side. I guess they didn't want to necessarily give like the strongest thing ever to every single player that way. But I don't know. I feel like they could have made him a little bit better, or even, of course, made him a little bit more like his other counterpart. Of course, it's based off of Luther. Luther. I thought I didn't do it because of cap log, but he's got the other restriction. Because, yeah, while he does still have the barrier thing, he doesn't actually get to do the attacking to all allies, which could have been cool, especially if they did like a little bit extra skull spam to it, or at least allowed him to create his own dragon gem or something beyond just his final trait. But yeah, he doesn't even get to do his attacking like the other one does. Like the other Luther does, which is something I'm kind of surprised they didn't end up doing, is making him into like an attacking skull spammer, kind of like a Lord of Slaughter, not Lord of Slaughter, oh, what's his name, Wild King. I'm surprised they didn't make him a little bit more into a Wild King kind of troop, especially since there's already skull spam within his kingdom, like Shegra and stuff that you can kind of synergize it with. But yeah, I'm really surprised they didn't go down that route. They kind of went down like the full AoE dragon route, but they didn't, though despite him not being a dragon, but they didn't really go down like the original Luther route, which of course was an attack gainer that was normally used with skull spam. So they could have made him, you know, just into Wild King, where it could also have been an attack gainer that also did skull spam. It probably would have been weaker than Wild King ultimately, but you know, give him a little AoE on top of that, a little skull spam there and there, a little bit of attacking to everyone. I know it could have been a lot better, but I'm not sure if they're going to buff it all by the time he, you know, you can actually end up obtaining him. But it does seem like in his current state, he's basically just going to ultimately be a useless, just AoE troop. Compared to all the dragons, all the other things that have kind of oversaturated the genre of things that hit all enemies simultaneously. And even in the context of his own kingdom, there just isn't much of a synergy where you're really going to be able to get away with him. So, I don't know. It's a little lackluster. I do kind of hope they buff it before he actually ends up getting, like, you know, truly released in, like, 3 weeks from now once you can get all 4 of the tarot cards. Which also means the final week is probably the most important one to grind it out. For these first 3 weeks, it's not going to be that big a deal to, you know, just get it passively through dailies. However, on the 4th week, it'll probably be worth actually grinding it out and, you know, doing it quickly, so you can end up getting him a little bit early. So we'll definitely end up doing that, maybe even get it done on the Monday night stream in a couple of weeks and just try doing the whole grind all at once. But anyways, guys, I'll wrap it up for now. Happy 10-year anniversary of Gems of War, and yeah, I will catch you guys soon. And of course, tonight we'll just be messing around with everything on stream, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as we always do, messing around with getting down the campaign thingy, or not the campaign, we currently don't have a campaign until next week. No campaign, though campaign 21 starting soon, TM, but you know, getting the new event thingy done, and invasion event, all that kind of good stuff. But anyways, guys, I hope you all enjoy your week, as well as election season if you're here in the United States, and I will catch you guys later. Goodbye, everyone, and thanks for watching.